Hello everyone, I'm Brian. Let's go ahead and continue.
Let's go into some discussion. Detailed dialectics, the arguments, you can find a lot of that material in that handout which I shared. Professor Mani Dravid Shastri, some 26 pages. He has poured all his learning into those lectures on Adhyasa Bhashya. So you can go through that. And in simple English, it's a translation from his, I think, Tamil lectures probably, or Sanskrit lectures. But I'll summarize very quickly. Here are the objections. The objections come from various different schools of Indian philosophy. So they say, not so fast, Shankaracharya. Your snake and rope example is fine, but the superimposition of the not self, body, mind on the self consciousness, this is not correct. It's not logical. Why not? Four major objections. One objection is that see, the snake and the rope, it is understandable. Snake and rope are similar. Sadrishya, similarity is there. One can, it's commonsensical why a person would mistake a rope for a snake. They look alike. A rope looks like a snake. But there is no similarity here. You yourself have said the self and the not self, consciousness and the body mind are so, you have said they're like light and darkness. You have put your foot in it yourself. You said they're light and darkness, they're completely dissimilar. How can you make a mistake? You can mistake a rope for a snake. You can't mistake a rope for a dog or a cat. But here the dissimilarity is much more. Self and not self. Like light and darkness, to quote you yourself. So how is a mistake possible? Mistake is not possible. Superimposition, adhyasa, not possible. Why? Sadrishya abhava, the lack of similarity. One objection. Second objection, all right, let me give you the answers for each of them, and then we will go on. Shankaracharya says that similarity is not always necessary. He says dissimilar things can also be mistaken. They can be adhyas or superimposition. Example he gives, akasha, space. Now, children, when they look up into the sky above, they think it's like an inverted bowl, like a surface is there, tala, like a surface. It looks like a bowl. We are under the bowl of the sky. There's no surface there. It's just empty space. But it looks like that. And children might think it's like a bowl or it's an inverted surface. Now, a bowl and sky are very different. And yet, children mix it up. Malinata. Malinata means dirt. Sometimes as kids, I know I did it. We think that the sky is dirty. Sky has become dirty. Maybe there are clouds or there are dust clouds or something. Well, the sky never becomes dirty. But we mistake the presence of clouds or dust as something that is sticking to the sky. Children might make such a mistake. So two entirely dissimilar things. The entirely formless, surfaceless space is mistaken for the surface of a bowl, the inner surface of a bowl. The completely untouched sky is seen to be dirty, for example. Similarly, Shankaracharya says, consciousness and its objects, though they are entirely different, self and the not self, though they are entirely different, there's no similarity, yet they can be mistaken and they are mistaken for each other. So we take the body mind to be the self, although we are not body mind. Second objection is, the opponent refines this position and says, look, I don't really mean, similarity in a crude sense. What I mean is, the snake and the rope are out there. They're objects of perception. You see a snake, you see a rope, and you can mix them up. So they're pratyaksha. Things which are seen can be confused, which may be seen or heard or smelt or tasted. They're objects of our senses. Pratyaksha vishaya. They're objects of our senses. And it's possible to confuse one for the other. But the self is not an object. So you cannot, how can you confuse an object like the body mind for the self, which is not an object? two objects can be confused, but the subject and object, how can you confuse? The self, according to you, is not something that can be seen. It's not an object of perception. Then how can you confuse it for some object? If you see the question, Shankaracharya says that, again, it's not a necessary condition, because the same example can be used to explain the Akasha, space example. Now, remember, they're debating with the Nyaya philosopher, for example. According to the Nyaya Vaisheshika philosopher, space is not an object of perception. To see space, you cannot see space. You can see something with a form. Space has no form, so we don't see space, and that's actually pretty logical. It's the brain which constitutes, after mind and the brain, which generates this idea of gap of space. You are not actually seeing space. You see things in space. Literally, eyes can't see lack of surface. Eyes will only see when light is reflected of something. So space is not something that is seen, and yet children say that the space has the sky above is like an inverted bowl, or the sky has become dirty. They are making a superimposition, a mistake about something which is not an object of perception. All that you need to know, Shankaracharya clarifies, all that we need to know is that the self exists. That much is needed. That I am. If you know that much, then you can have a confusion about what I am. To repeat that, even though the self is not an object, if you just know about your own existence, that I am, and then the confusion can come that I am this or that. The self need not be an object of perception. Just the knowledge of your own existence, that I exist, that much is enough for confusion to ensue. So that's the second objection. The third objection is that well, you are saying the self is known, I am, you know that you exist. But for superimposition to happen, adhyasa to happen, it must be unknown. The rope is unknown. Therefore, it is mistaken to be a snake. But you know you exist. You know yourself. I know myself. What is unknown about this? Then how can I make a mistake? Look, this is a subtle variation of the arguments. The arguments are very nice, back and forth. The moment Shankaracharya says, it need not be an object of perception. You just have to know that you exist. It's enough for superimposition. Immediately the opponent picks up on that. Yes, so you know that you exist. But then in order for there to be superimposition, there must be ignorance. You must not know. The rope is not known, and therefore there is a problem. You mistake it for a snake. Now you are saying you know yourself, you know the self. We all agree we know ourselves. Who else knows myself more than me? Then how can there be a mistake? Ignorance is necessary for mistake. Ajnana is necessary for adhyasa. But there is no ajnana here. The self is known. When Shankaracharya clarifies, of course we know the answer. Shankaracharya clarifies, it is partial ignorance which is necessary. So for example, even the rope is not totally unknown. You feel there is something there in the darkness. What's there? What's there? Oh, it's a snake. But when you said something is there, you're not wrong. There is something. There's a rope. But that rope part of it was not known. What it is was not known. But that it is was known. Similarly, we know we exist. But we do not know that we are limitless existence, consciousness, bliss. We do not know that we are Brahman. We do not know that we are immortal. We do not know that we are the reality of this universe. That we don't know. We just know that we exist. That much is enough for superimposition to occur. So partial knowledge and partial ignorance. That is the perfect condition, in fact, for superimposition to occur. Then the opponent changes track. He says, wait, rope and snake, you mistake a rope for a snake. Because, why do you do that? Because you have seen a snake earlier. You've seen a snake. Now, you've seen a real snake. Now you're making a mistake. it's not a snake, it's a rope, but you're making a mistake. It's like an illusion. A snake comes, but only because you've seen a snake earlier, and the real snake. Now you are saying that Brahman is there and the world, and you're mistaking Brahman for the world, or you are pure consciousness. Same thing. You are pure consciousness, but you're mistaking yourself for body-mind. Why will you mistake yourself for body-mind? Because you must have experienced body-mind earlier. So there must be a real body-mind. There must be a real world for you to make a mistake. There is a real snake which you have seen, maybe in the garden or in the zoo. And now you make a mistake by seeing what is not a snake, a rope, as a snake. So there must be a real world, a real body, real mind, that which you have experienced earlier. Now you say you're making a mistake by seeing the body-mind, consciousness as body-mind. But in that case, why say such things? Just admit that the body-mind are real. The world is real. You are a body-mind. Why are you saying it's a mistake? Do you see those two steps of the argument? The step is, yes, in the case of a snake and a rope, we admit, the opponent will say, we admit it's a real mistake. You're mistaken about it. It's a rope, but it's a snake. You have seen a snake earlier. You're making a mistake thinking it's a snake. But in this case of body and mind, it need not be a mistake. You are actually seeing a body-mind, because you have to admit that a real body-mind exists in order for you to make a mistake. Otherwise, where will you even get experience of a body-mind? So that means this works even better in the Brahman and the world. Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya. Brahman is real, the world is false. Advaitin we claim. Where is this world? Here in Brahman itself, you're making a mistake, a superimposition. Just like seeing a rope as a snake, you're seeing Brahman as the world. But the opponent says, in order to see a false world, you must have experienced a real world. Otherwise, where will the false world come from? Just like a snake. And if you have experienced a real world, then a real world exists. Why claim that the world is false? So this is where the opponent pushes the non-dualist. The non-dualist, Shankara or Advaitins, will answer. The answer is very subtle but very powerful. What is necessary for making a mistake? Opponent says, you must have seen a snake earlier. You must have seen a snake earlier. You must have experienced a snake earlier. Need not be a real snake. For example, a child who has never seen a snake in his or her life, who has seen a snake in a movie, who has seen a snake in a picture book, can make a mistake, can mistake a rope for a snake. Because the samskara of a snake is there in the mind. All that is necessary for the samskara, or the tendency, the impression to be there, is to have an experience. It need not be of a real snake. It could be of an appearance. An experience of a false snake can give you the samskara of a false snake and make you see a false snake later. An experience of a nightmare, if you have it once, you can have a recurrent nightmare again and again and again. Where does it come from? From the previous nightmare. Where did that come from? From the previous nightmare. Similarly, samsara and body and mind, we are getting it because of our past samskaras. But where did those past samskaras come from? From earlier superimposition, from earlier adhyasa. We inhabited this world of Maya for many lifetimes. We are getting these samskaras, and therefore we are repeating it again and again. We are seeing a world, we are seeing body, mind, where only Brahman exists. But
Okay, I was wondering where I was going to go with that. Like, obviously you must have experienced something prior in order to be able to make a mistake about it. And about it being like, it doesn't have to be like from a movies or from a dreams. You can mistake something for it. A dream, obviously you have to, generally speaking, experience something of it. And your imaginations can run wild and create crazy things that you've experienced. So like 5-armed people or 10-headed people. So long as you know what a head is and a person is, your imagination can make multiple heads on one body, or multiple arms or limbs on the body, so that you can have experience of these things for nightmares to build onto future samskara or future mistakes. But again, you still need to experience something prior. And I was wondering where he's going to go with that, because if you've not experienced anything prior, then you have nothing to build upon. But looks like he's going over here with the fact that if you were birthed many times in the past, and according to Swami Tadamananda, there's an infinite number of births. There's no beginning, which it's kind of hard to believe in that. That's there. To me, there's always everything always has a beginning. Now, to a beginning is something I believe that's a must, but an end, that's it's easy to accept there may not be an end to something, but there must be a beginning. You cannot something cannot have it's really weird to say have always existed, but then again that is the issue with, well, God or the start of the universe. There's an obvious start somewhere, right? And then after that, that's all that really matters to me. It could last infinite lives. It could never end, but there was always a start to it. So, so his explanation to our knowledge about false things is from some scholar from our past lives. But is there a start to this
And
one?
the question will arise, all right, but where did this first samskara come from?
Yeah.
A related question. You said, I am experiencing body mind now, world now, because of my past experiences of the world and body mind. Where did those past experiences come from? From the earlier experiences. And those ones came from even more previous experience. Where did it first start? And the answer is, it didn't. It didn't start first. It is beginningless. Anadi avidya. And I've explained this earlier also. It's not a cop-out. It's not an excuse. Beginningless is actually very logical. Ignorance is always beginningless. I give the example again. Professor Jain Mahanti, I've said this earlier also in the Institute of Culture in Gold Park in a class on Vedanta. He explained it so simply he explained it to us. Ignorance is always beginningless. How? He said, do any of you know German? And we said, no. So you're ignorant of German? We said, yes. Since when are you ignorant of German? Someone said, since my birth. Oh, so before your birth you knew German? No.
You can't say there's nothing before my birth, though. I wonder, but my biggest issue with this is the fact that there's how do I say? There must still be something to experience in order for something to occur. Actually, him talk about the Germans and stuff. I forget what my argument was, but it's very weird. It's very difficult for me to understand. And a never beginning. It's just I cannot grasp my mind around that at the moment. I've tried thinking about it, but just nothing. I can imagine infinity. Not a problem. No start, big problem. I don't know why. I don't believe there's an example in the world that doesn't have a beginning. Ignorance. Well, at the very beginning, there was no ignorance, I believe, considering there was nothing to know. Therefore, no ignorance. That's the argument I was thinking of. But once there is something to know, ignorance is born. So once knowledge is out there, ignorance is born. Without knowledge, there's no ignorance. Or wait, without things to know, there's no ignorance. There we go. Without knowledge, there's no ignorance. Now, without things to know, there's no ignorance, right? If there's nothing to know, there's nothing to be ignorant about. So in order for ignorance to exist, there must be something to know. So, and that's my argument, right? Sounds fair enough so far, right? I hope.
If you're ignorant of German, you have been ignorant of German since beginningless time. However, when you get knowledge of German, the ignorance goes away. So ignorance is beginningless, and the mistakes produced by ignorance also are beginningless. But when the knowledge comes, they will go away. So this is the answer to the fourth question.
Hold on then. Would the question be, has there always been something to know since the beginning, or it's hard to say the beginning of time, because if there's no beginning, I cannot say that word. Has there always been something to know since, I don't know what to say to that, since infinite, since Since I honestly, hold on, let's see how you answer that.
So ignorance is beginningless, and the mistakes produced by ignorance also.
There we go. Sorry. So has there been things to know since beginningless? Has there always been things to know since beginningless? If that is true, then ignorance is beginningless. I can agree with that. It's a weird word to say, beginningless. But yes, if things to know has never been beginningless, then ignorance is not beginningless. It doesn't make sense. It makes sense to me so far. I have not thought about this at all until just now. Because like the argument says, or like my argument says, that if there's not things to know, ignorance does not exist. If there are things to know, ignorance does exist, and only exists if the things to know are unknown, therefore ignorance. But once the things that are known, there's no ignorance. So therefore, things to know that are there are things to know that are unknown, therefore ignorance. Hopefully that makes sense. And let me know. It does make logical sense, and I'm guessing, are there things to know since beginningless? That's a really whew.
Are beginningless. But when the knowledge comes, they will go away. So this is the answer to the fourth question. That doesn't superimposition mean that there is actually a real world? No. You need previous experience, but you don't. That experience doesn't have to be experience of a real thing. Children all the time, you can see ghosts. Nobody, the children have not actually experienced a ghost. An actual ghost may not even exist, and the child sees a ghost. So only the samskara is necessary, and the samskara can be produced by past false experiences also. Now, Shankaracharya goes on the offensive. After having refuted the objections, he says, you know, my friends, you all philosophers, you are all following the Vedas. And the Vedas implicitly accept Adhyasa, superimposition. And you being the followers of the Vedas, meaning the other schools, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Yoga, Purva, Mimamsa, you all accept superimposition. So here he's just debating with the Vedic schools. How do you accept superimposition? If you are, how are the Vedas implying superimposition? Very simple. For example, don't the Vedas say that you die and you go to heaven and then you are reborn again? Yes, we all accept that as Hindus, or also Buddhists, Jains, Sikhs, all of us. We accept that there are many births. In that case, if you accept that there are many births, clearly that which is going from lifetime to lifetime cannot be the body. The body dies. The subtle body goes on from lifetime to lifetime and getting newer and newer bodies. All right, that also we accept. But what's your point? The point is, if you accept Punarjanma, like as any Hindu, Buddhist, Jain, Sikh, you have to accept Punarjanma. That's your belief. That's your religion. If you accept it, then you accept that you are not the body. And if you accept that you're not the body, then the day-to-day activities which are going on, I am tall, I am short, I am a man, I am a woman, I am a Brahmin, I am a Kshatriya, I am a Shudra, all of this must be Adhyasa, superimposition. You all deal with this all the time. You means non-dualist, other than the non-dualist, other than the Advaitin. You Nayayikas, Sankhyas, Yoga, Purva Mimamsakas, all philosophers, you clearly see people identify themselves with the body. And this identification must be false. It must be a superimposition, because you hold that none of us are the body. Because we are born and we die. Body is born and dying, but we go from lifetime to lifetime. If you are an immortal soul, which all religious people accept, then just by the fact of being a religious person, you accept that there must be a superimposition or adhyasa. The identification with body-mind must be false identification. And then he gives examples. Not only the Vedas, our worldly life also gives plenty of example of adhyasa. rope and snake. Then he says, Ekas Chandrasad Dvitiyavad Bhati. If you look at the moon and you press your eyelid, you will see two moons. Like even now, if you see the computer and you press your eyelid, you will see two computers or more than that. Now, that which is one appears to be two. That which is a rope appears to be a snake. That which is a colorless sky appears to be a blue sky. These are all worldly examples. In Sanskrit, Laukika. And people say, yeah, we know these. These are called illusions, optical illusions, and whatnot, errors. So this is Adhyasa, this is superimposition. What is not there is taken to be there. One moon is taken to be two moons. Colorless sky, space is colorless, taken to be blue sky. Another example, the seashell is taken to be silver. That's a classical Sanskrit in Sanskrit text you find. So, Laukika, worldly examples of Adhyasa superimposition are there. What's his point? His point is Vedas, which we all believe in, they imply that there is superimposition. And in day-to-day life, other than the Vedas, in our day-to-day life, Laukika, worldly life, we come across many experiences of superimposition or Adhyasa. Therefore, Vaidika Laukika, sacred and secular, in all fields, Adhyasa is accepted. So what's your point? The point here is, in debate, it's a rule. If there is some fault, there's something that I accept, I cannot accuse you of committing a fault if you accept the same thing. We all accept, the Nayayikas, Vaisheshikas, Sankhyas, we all accept Adhyasa. Now, I can't say that the Advaitin is making a mistake by accepting Adhyasa. You can't accuse me, the non-dualist, of making a mistake when you, in your system, it is implied in all of your systems. So this is Shankara's reply to the objections. Then he goes forward to prove the existence of Adhyasa. I'll just tell you briefly how he does that, and then conclude with his conclusion. So this is like a sweeping overview. I'm leaving out lots and lots of things. For example, two big things I'm leaving out. Definition of Adhyasa. He has given at least 3 clear definitions of Adhyasa. I'm not going into that. Then there's something called Khyati Vada, the theory of error. The theory of error. You, the non-dualist, you are saying that we are making a big error. What is the error? You're not the body, not the mind, but you think you're body-mind. This is not a real physical universe out there. You think it's a real universe. You're actually pure consciousness. Chidananda Rupa Shivoham. You're making an error. But what is an error? How does an error occur? What is the theory, the philosophy, the mechanics of an error? So you might think that, mistake, about a mistake itself, so much thinking has gone on. Every philosophical school, Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Buddhist Vijnanavada, the Shunyavada, Madhyamaka Shunyavada, all of them have their unique theories of error. And so does the non-dualist, Advaitin. So this Khyati, it means false appearance. How does this false appearance happen? This error, how does it happen? Atma Khyati, Asat Khyati, Sat Khyati, so many things are there. Our own theory, Advaitin theory, is called Anirvachaniya Khyati. So all of these are also touched upon by Shankaracharya. I am not entering that. It's a vast, vast field. Each of these theories will take quite a bit of time to explain. And then what are the faults with each theory and why the non-dualist theory is to be accepted. So that's a big, at least 6 theories of error are taken up and then dismissed by Shankaracharya. And even that is just a sampling. I have a book written by a philosopher in a university in India, which takes up 15 theories of error. They're just talking about mistakes, errors, and they're going into so much detail. I'm not going into that. So what I'll touch upon is Shankaracharya's proving, pramana, proof that there is superimposition, that we are making a terrible mistake and it needs to be corrected, and showing that that is necessary, that this correction of this error is the basis of spiritual inquiry. Okay, first of all, what is this proof? For this, I will introduce a term called arthapatti. Arthapatti is translated in English as um, implication or presumption or assumption. It goes like this. Simple example. It's a way of knowing things. What is this way? Presuming something. So example is, the classic example in Indian philosophy is Pino Devadatta Divana Bhungte Atho Ratro Bhungte. The obese, the fat Devadatta does not eat in daytime, in public. Nobody has seen him eating. So he must be eating at night because he is overweight. He is grossly overweight. So he's obese. Pina means fat or plump or obese. Devadatta, don't bother who Devadatta is. Whenever you want an example, I mean, in English you can say Mr. Smith or something. Just some guy. He is plump. He is overweight. He is obese. But you never see him eating. So what do you assume? What do you presume? He eats in secret. He eats at night. Pino Devadatta. Devadatta who is fat or overweight. Somebody corrected me. So don't say fat, Swami. Say large. So, okay, large. So the large Devadatta does not eat at daytime. We don't see him eating at daytime. Therefore, we assume he must be eating at night. Where does he get all those extra calories from? He must be eating at night. That assumption, that presumption, that's called arthapatti. That's one way of knowing things. How does this relate to what we are doing? Here is the thing. What Shankaracharya is saying is that we have to use this to develop our theory to come to this idea of adhyasa, to this idea of Maya. Everything is Maya, everything is an appearance, that we are making a serious mistake and error. All of this is arthapatti. Arthapatti. Based on what? He'll give examples. Again, from the Vedas. The Vedas, the Upanishads, the Gita, they are the basis. For example, Shankara, but the non-dualist will say, for example, when the Gita, we find in the Gita, whoever thinks that this self, the Atman, is the killer or is killed, they do not know, they are mistaken, because the Atman is neither the killer nor the killed. Yainam manyate, yaschainam manyate hanta. Yamanyate hanta, yaschainam manyate hatam. Ubhau tau na vijanito, nayam hanti na hanyate. In the Gita, 2nd chapter, Krishna says, whoever thinks that the self is the killer, whoever thinks the self is killed, does not know, because the self is neither the killer nor the killed. Why this killer and killing? Because it's in the battlefield situation. But what it means is, the self is not the doer of deeds, nor the enjoyer or sufferer of the results of deeds. Is not, in Sanskrit, karta bhokta, not an agent of action, nor the enjoyer or sufferer of the results of action. The Gita says this. Upanishad says, Kathopanishad, which we just read, it says this. Nayam hanyate na hanyamane sharire. When the body is destroyed, the Atman is not destroyed. Now the opponent would say, yes, I remember reading the Gita, the Upanishad. You don't have to teach me Gita and Upanishad. I know them. What's your point? My point is that the Gita, the Upanishad, which we all believe in, which we are studying, and we think that's the truth, it says that you do not die. You are not the killer. But in our day-to-day life, we feel that we feel we are the doer, we are the enjoyer, we are the sufferer. Somebody is born, somebody is dying. We feel all that. We see all that in day-to-day life. Now you see two things. Just like the fat or the large Devadatta does not eat in the daytime, therefore he must be eating at night. Gita says, you are not born, you do not die, you are not the killer, you are not killed, and yet we feel we are born, we die, we are the killer, we are killed, or we are doer, or the sufferer. Now these two do not match. So what do you presume? You presume that what we are experiencing, what we think we are, that we are born and we die, or we are the doer of the deeds or the sufferer of the consequences, this must be adhyasa. This must be a mistake. So this is Arthapatti. Let me repeat it briefly. You'll see the argument. The argument is the large Devadatta and the overweight Devadatta does not eat at day, in the daytime. Nobody has seen him eating. Therefore, I presume he eats at night. Otherwise, how could he get those extra calories? Similarly, I am sure that the self is not born, does not die, is not the doer of deeds, not the experiencer of the results of actions. How are you sure? Because Gita says so, Upanishad says so, and we are all followers of the Vedic religion. And yet, in what is the fact? Just like we see the Devadatta is overweight, we are seeing that we all feel that we are the doer of deeds, we are born, we die. In that case, what we seem to be experiencing must be a mistake, must be adhyasa, must be a superimposition, must be due to identification with body and mind. It is the body which is born, it is the body which is dying. Somehow we are thinking we are born with the birth of the body, we die with the death of the body. Krishna says very clearly, one example, and many such examples in Upanishads and all.
I'm going to pause it right there before the example to save enough video for the last episode. 10, 30 minutes. Okay, perfect. So we'll rewind it for the next one though. So anyways, about my question earlier, again, I've said this before with Swami Taramananda's video about beginningless. It's just something I can't wrap my head around, so it's very difficult for me to understand that. Infinity, I guess infinity is kind of in the same word. There's no beginning and no end to some degree, but what I think of, I guess I think of infinity, I think of a starting point and never ending. So you have a starting point, but a starting point's not the end. Infinity, to me, can have a starting point, but the point of infinity is never ending. Not necessarily never beginning. Or, I can't say beginningless, because then there'd be no beginning. Which is what he says. You know what I'm talking about. But I guess I don't understand if has there always been knowledge in this universe that's always been unknown? Because that's the only way ignorance would exist. Again, with the understanding of beginningless, I guess everything has always been as it is. Therefore, well, I don't want to answer that yet. I don't want to answer that. I want to know what you guys think about that question that I asked. Has there always been knowledge out there that we always have lacked? Even I don't know how to explain this question, because I said it a little bit earlier, but I'm trying to maybe repeat it a little bit, maybe phrase it a little bit differently. Because again, without the beginning, it's so difficult. And it's something that I can't grasp or understand, because, you know, there's well, I guess this universe could be reborn many times, as in it collapsed to a singularity, then explode out again. Sadhguru talks about 80, I believe the number was 84, and maybe this universe collapsed on itself and expanded 84 times. You know, we're the 84th iteration of the universe. And I've heard some people in the comment section say about the only time the universe will collapse on itself, either that, or either in the comment section, or I've seen it in a video, I think it's in the comment section, that the only time the universe will collapse on itself is once all the karma has been, I guess, used, you could say, expended, and essentially everyone has become realized, and there's no more rebirth, and only at that point will the universe collapse on itself, and then it'll be reborn again when there's karma again. Was that a video or is that comment section or both? So anyways, karma. But yes, so essentially, once everyone's been realized, then ignorance no longer exists. Therefore, well, no more karma because everyone's enlightened. Everyone knows. All knowledge is no longer an issue. Therefore, no more ignorance. But once the universe is born, or when the universe collapses on itself, again, I don't know how you perceive how the universe works. I'm formulating it from a little bit of a different perspective. So obviously, I know rebirth is believed. I don't know whether people believe in the universe collapsing on itself, then re-expanding, and collapsing and re-expanding, collapsing and re-expanding. I don't know if people believe that or not. But if you're a follower of Guru, if you believe he says, you know, talk about the number 84, which I don't, he never really says that is the universe has been recreated 84 times, but I believe he was talking to a scientist saying that, you know, maybe the universe has recreated itself, and then Sadhguru says, just remember the number 84. I believe that's the number that he said. And so it was assumed for me that the universe was created 84 times. So anyways, and then I've heard somewhere that, you know, the universe will collapse on itself once all ignorance has been extinguished, in a sense. So once everyone's been realized, when there are, and also when there's no more karma in the world. Although, you know, I've heard that from somewhere else too, but also at the same time, karma, there's infinite number of karma, good and bad, according to Swami Tadatmananda. However, if you are enlightened, karma will no longer affect you at all, so it becomes irrelevant, even though your body continues to generate it, but you're not suffering from it anymore. So it's very complicated in terms of all the things that I've learned and I've kind of kept that I at least remember. So anyways, so once the universe collapses on itself, once all ignorance is gone and the universe is then and the universe is a singularity, it hasn't exploded yet, there is no knowledge to be learned because there's nothing to be learned. But then when it explodes, there's still nothing to be learned, I would assume. I don't know, where does that, once the universe explodes or expands, I don't know if you believe in that or not. You know, where does the ignorance come into play? Knowledge must be out there in order for ignorance to exist. If there's no knowledge, there's nothing to learn, nothing to know, then there's no ignorance. This is a very complicated question. I don't know if you guys want to even answer that. It's really tough. If you have an answer, I'm sure I'll read it, because it's kind of interesting, the question that I stated. I don't know if it's something very simple. Oh yeah, that's very easy. Here it is. Pop, 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 pop. You know, or something thought-provoking. To me, it's thought-provoking a little bit, but just because the concept of beginningless is so difficult to me, I understand it to a degree, but I just can't play it out in my head how it works, I suppose, maybe. Anyways, that's my reaction to Adhyasa Bhashya. Oh my god, why I am saying it so differently. That's my reaction to this video, for at least for part 2. Part 3 will be next time, obviously. If you like my content, please consider subscribing, thumbs up, thumbs down, down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next vid.